In this video, we are going to go over the new feature added in version 1.7, direct recording, which allows us to record in through a microphone or any other input on the MPC Renaissance hardware direct to a track. It's very easy to use, very functional, and very useful. Now, the first thing we need to do to prep for this is to create a new program where our sample is going to live. Now, of course, if you already had one that you built for this session, you could, of course, use that, but I like to keep everything separate. So let's go over to our program on an empty track, hit Window, and then we're going to hit New Drum Program. And of course, we could name it, but it's easier to do it from the keyboard. All right, now that I've named and set up our new drum program, it's very simple. All we're going to do is go into Shift, Sample Record. All right, and the functionality here is that you want to make sure everything's set up, your input, your mode, the time, and the threshold. The threshold is going to say, I will automatically start recording once you get something above the threshold. The time, of course, is the length of the sample. Now, this is important because if you only set up a 20-second recording, but your loop is, let's say, 30 seconds, it'll cut off the end of the recording. Best practice here to just go up and turn the time up to something you're not going to need. And then, of course, we'll just trim the end in the sample edit window. Now, we have two options here for the input of our new sample. We can either use the input of the external hardware, which would be back here, using these knobs, such as a phono input for a vinyl, or RCA if you've got a tape deck, or mic in case you just want to hook up a regular microphone and overlay some vocal samples, or of course line level input like I'm using. Now I've gone ahead and taken a guitar, plugged it into my 11 rack by Avid, and the output of that rack is coming into the line in using the XLR. So make sure that you're set up here, mic in and not phono in, and on the back of the unit there is a switch that goes from mic level to line level. Make sure that you've set it appropriately based on your input. The next thing you want to do is turn your monitor to on. This will allow you to actually hear what you're going to get. And then, of course, you can set your mode, whether you want to record a mono source from the left, the right, or a stereo source. Pick it depending on what you're going to do. So I'm going to pick left input, mono, and let's do it. Now, the method here is just to go ahead and hit play start your loop going, let it loop one time, and then start from the downbeat and record the entire phrase. So let's do that now. Now, if you've done everything correctly up to this point, you're going to have a window pop up with a few options. You'll need to use the hardware to actually activate all of these options and not the mouse. Now, at first, you can assign it to a track. It'll automatically pull up the track you were on, which is why we navigated to a free track first. Then you can actually name the sample. So let's call this guitar loop. All right, now we're going to assign to pad. But as you'll notice, I don't really have an access panel here. So navigate down and just take it to any free pad in our new drum kit. Now you have two options here, add event, add start. Well, those seem pretty straightforward. We want MPC to automatically add a trigger event at the start of the sequence as we played it. Now just hit keep and we're good to go. Now let's go into sample edit and check our work. Now we need to make sure that our green loop point is set correctly for playback. So the easiest thing is just to grab and scroll. Now the end of the loop doesn't matter as much, but we should chop it close to our final hit. Now that our points are set up correctly, we have one thing to keep in mind. Since we played this based on what we were hearing, there might be one, a little latency depending on how you have your audio device preferences set up, and two, a little bit of latency depending on where you actually set the loop point from based on the trigger. So the goal here is we're going to want to adjust the start as we listen back, and as we pull the start later, the track will feel a little faster. Let's hear what I mean. So we'll go into sample edit again, and all we have to do is roll back to start time. Now, it sounds pretty cool, but at this point, if we wanted to go even farther, we could, of course, assign each one of those hits to different pads. Maybe we could even look for the ones that were the most in tune and keep those. Now, if you wanted to edit those into individual hits, we would need to go back into sample edit. And then, of course, we could set our start and end points around the hit we like, and then extract that into a new sample using the process feature. Now, at this point, you have several options under function, such as extract. From here, you would hit do it, and whatever you have highlighted would become a new sample, which you could then apply to a new pad. This would be very useful if, let's say, you wanted to replace one of the hits that wasn't quite in tune with a hit somewhere else in the song, or if you wanted to get a little choppy and play one of the chords a couple times. Now, of course, the sky's the limit with what you could do here. You could even record vocals, or let's say a shaker or a tambourine, and add any kind of excitement you want to your mix. In the next video, we're going to prep our final mix and do a mix down for our client.